My name is Quinn Donnelly. I'm 33. On Tuesday morning at 8:47 a.m., I was standing in my own kitchen reading a Venmo notification on my husband's phone that said, "Thanks for last night, baby," with three heart emojis, sent to someone named Delilah Monroe for $340. The coffee maker was still brewing. Thomas was in the shower. The payment was timestamped 11:23 p.m. the night before, exactly when he'd told me he was working late on quarterly reports. I scrolled up. There were dozens more. $220 for dinner date, $580 for weekend getaway contribution, $450 for that thing you like. The oldest one went back 14 months. I added them up right there, my hands shaking so badly I had to restart twice. $18,640. $18,640 of our money, sent to a woman whose name I'd never heard. I heard the shower shut off. I took 3 screenshots and texted them to myself. Then I deleted the texts from his phone, put it back on the counter exactly where he'd left it, and poured myself coffee like my entire life wasn't disintegrating. When Thomas walked into the kitchen 2 minutes later, toweling his hair, he kissed the top of my head. "Morning, babe. You okay? You look pale." I turned to face him. My voice came out steadier than I expected. "Who's Delilah Monroe?" His face didn't change immediately. There was this microsecond where I saw him calculating, deciding which lie would work best. Then he smiled, that easy smile that had convinced me to marry him 6 years ago. "Delilah? She's the marketing consultant I told you about last month. Why?" "You've sent her over $18,000 in the past year." Now his expression shifted. Not guilt, annoyance. "Quinn, I've explained this to you 3 times already. Marketing consultants aren't cheap. If you'd pay attention when I talk about the business instead of zoning out. You sent her $340 at 11:23 last night. She called you baby." The kitchen went completely silent except for the coffee maker's final gurgle. Thomas set down his towel. When he spoke again, his voice had an edge I'd heard before but never directed at me. "You went through my phone. You're cheating on me. I'm building a business. Our business. The business that pays for this house and your car and everything else you take for granted. And instead of supporting me, you're acting like some paranoid—" He stopped himself, but I heard the word he didn't say. "Some paranoid what, Thomas?" "Forget it." He grabbed his phone off the counter, checked it, then looked at me with something close to contempt. "This is exactly why I don't involve you in business decisions anymore. You don't understand how these relationships work. Relationships. Professional relationships." He was already walking toward the door, pulling on his jacket. "I have a meeting at 9. We'll talk about this tonight when you've calmed down." "Thomas." He turned back, and his voice dropped to something cold and final. "Do not go through my phone again, Quinn. That's a violation of trust." Then he left. I stood there listening to his car pull out of the driveway, still holding my coffee mug, my face burning so hot I could feel my pulse in my teeth. Before I go on, if stories about standing up for yourself mean something to you, please hit like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and what time is it there. Let me take you back 9 years to when I first met Thomas's mother, Diary Morris. It was Thanksgiving 2016, and she'd invited me to dinner even though Thomas and I had only been dating 4 months. She lived in a small brick house in Wilmington with a garden full of winter roses that somehow still bloomed in November. I remember she opened the door wearing a blue cardigan and pearl earrings, and the whole house smelled like cinnamon and butter. "You must be Quinn," she said, pulling me into a hug before I'd even introduced myself. "Thomas has told me so much about you. Come in, sweetheart. Let me look at you." We sat in her kitchen while she made sweet tea, and she asked me questions about my work as a payroll coordinator, about my family, about what I wanted from life. Real questions, not small talk. At one point, she touched my hand and said, "Thomas's father was very charming too. He could talk his way out of anything. It took me years to see what was underneath all that charm." I didn't know what she meant then. She saw my confusion and smiled sadly. I'm just saying, sweetheart, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And if you ever need someone to believe you, you call me. Promise? I promised. She squeezed my hand. Good. Because sometimes the people we love most are the ones who teach us we should have loved ourselves more. That was the warmest, safest I'd felt in years. I should have remembered that feeling. I should have called her the morning I found those Venmo payments. Instead, I went to work. I sat at my desk processing payroll for a medical supply company and pretended everything was fine. My coworker Janet brought me coffee at 10:30 and asked if I was feeling okay. I told her I was just tired. She didn't believe me, but she let it go. Thomas came home that night with flowers. Tulips, my favorite. I'm sorry I was short with you this morning, he said, setting them on the counter. Work's been stressful, but you're right. We should talk. I waited. Delilah is a marketing consultant. That's true, but she's also… He paused, running a hand through his hair like he was embarrassed. She's Susan's friend. My sister introduced us when I was trying to expand the business. Some of those payments you saw were personal loans. I was helping her out during a rough patch. 14 months of rough patches? Quinn. He sat down across from me, taking my hands. His thumbs rubbed circles on my wrists. I should have told you. I know that. But I also know how you feel about lending people money, and I didn't want to fight about it. Susan's been struggling too. I've been trying to help both of them without making you feel like I'm putting my family before ours. It was so reasonable. So Thomas. He had an explanation for everything, delivered with just enough vulnerability to make me feel guilty for doubting him. Why did she call you baby? She calls everyone that. It's just how she talks. He squeezed my hands. Look, if it makes you uncomfortable, I'll stop helping her. I'll tell Susan to find someone else. But please don't make this into something it's not. I wanted to believe him. That's the part I'm most ashamed of now. I wanted it so badly that I convinced myself I was being paranoid, possessive, one of those wives who sees threats everywhere. Okay, I said. He kissed my forehead. Thank you for trusting me. But I didn't trust him, not really. I just didn't know what else to do. 3 weeks later, I was processing payroll at work when I noticed something strange in our company's records. We'd hired a new administrative support consultant 5 months earlier, someone named Susan Morris. She was being paid $4,800 a month. I'd never met her. She'd never come to the office. I handled all the administrative work myself. I pulled up her file. The contract had been signed by Thomas. He was part owner of the company with his business partner, Greg Halverson, so technically he had authority to hire contractors. But $4,800 a month for a sister-in-law who didn't actually work there? I made a copy of the file and took it home. That night at dinner, I said casually, I didn't know Susan was working for the company. Thomas looked up from his plate. What? Susan, your sister. She's listed as an administrative support consultant, $4,800 a month. His expression went blank for a moment, then rearranged itself into mild surprise. Oh, right. I forgot you'd see that in payroll. Yeah, she's been helping with some back-end stuff, filing, organizing records, that kind of thing. She works remotely. What records? Client files, inventory spreadsheets. Why? Because I've never seen any work from her, and I handle all of that. Thomas set down his fork. Quinn, are you seriously questioning my business decisions now? I'm asking a question. No, you're accusing me of something. Again. First, it was Delilah, now it's Susan. Do you have any idea how exhausting this is? Thomas, I work 60-hour weeks to build something for us, and all you do is audit me like I'm some kind of criminal. He pushed back from the table. Susan needed work. I gave her work. She does it from home. End of story. Can I see the work she's done? He stared at me for a long moment. You know what? No, because this isn't about the work. This is about you not trusting me. And I'm done defending myself in my own house. He left the table. 30 seconds later, I heard his car start. He didn't come home until after midnight. The next morning, I called Susan. I'd only met her a handful of times at family gatherings. She was younger than Thomas, 28, worked as a yoga instructor and waitress. She answered on the third ring. Susan, hi, it's Quinn, Thomas's wife. Oh, hey. Her voice was cautious. I have a quick question about the administrative work you've been doing for the company. I'm organizing some files and I want to make sure I'm not duplicating anything you've already done. Silence. Susan? I don't know what you're talking about. My stomach dropped. The administrative support work, for the company. You've been listed as a contractor for 5 months. Quinn, I haven't done any work for Thomas's company. He told me he was putting me on payroll as a favor because I was behind on rent, but I didn't think he was serious. I mean, I never actually did anything. You've been getting paid? Well, yeah, but… She stopped. Wait, is there a problem? Is Thomas in trouble? No, I said quickly. No problem, I just wanted to clarify. Thanks, Susan. I hung up before she could ask anything else. $4,800 a month for 5 months, $24,000, plus the $18,640 to Delilah. That was $42,640 I could prove, and I had no idea what else I didn't know about. I called Diary that afternoon. She answered on the first ring, like she'd been waiting for my call for years. Quinn, sweetheart, I was wondering when I'd hear from you. Did you know, I asked, about Thomas? She was quiet for a moment. I suspected. His father did the same thing. Different names, same pattern. I didn't have proof, and Thomas stopped talking to me about the business years ago. But yes, I suspected. What do I do? You document everything. Every transaction, every lie, every time he makes you feel crazy for noticing. Then you wait for the right moment. Her voice was steady, certain. And Quinn? Don't tell him you're documenting. Don't tell anyone. Men like Thomas are dangerous when cornered. I don't know if I can do this. You can, because the alternative is spending the rest of your life wondering how much he's stolen and whether he ever loved you at all. I documented. Over the next 6 weeks, I went through every bank statement, every credit card bill, every business expense report I could access. I found receipts for hotel rooms in Philadelphia on nights Thomas said he was working late in Wilmington. I found jewelry purchases for $2,300 that I'd never received. I found cash withdrawals totaling $8,900 with no explanation. And I found Coastal Ventures LLC. It took me 3 days to figure out what it was. A shell company, registered in Thomas's name only, with a business address that turned out to be a UPS store. Money was being funneled from our legitimate company into Coastal Ventures, then dispersed to various accounts I couldn't trace. The amounts were small enough that Greg, Thomas's business partner, probably wouldn't notice. $1,800 here, $3,200 there. Over 18 months, it added up to $76,000. I made copies of everything. I stored them in a safety deposit box at a bank Thomas didn't know about. Then in February, Thomas came home and told me he wanted a divorce. We were in the living room. He didn't sit down. This isn't working anymore, Quinn. We've grown apart. I think we both know that. I felt like I'd been punched. Even knowing what I knew, hearing him say it out loud made my hands go numb. Thomas, I've already talked to a lawyer. We can do this amicably. Split everything down the middle. You keep your retirement account, I keep the business. We sell the house and divide the proceeds. Clean break. What about Delilah? His jaw tightened. This isn't about Delilah. What about the $76,000 in Coastal Ventures? I watched his face change. It was like watching a mask slip off. For the first time in 6 years, I saw something real underneath, and it was cold. I don't know what you think you found. I found everything. My voice didn't shake. The fake payroll entries, the shell company, the affair, all of it. He was quiet for a long time. Then he smiled, and it was the worst smile I'd ever seen. Okay, then I guess we're not doing this amicably. Thomas, my lawyer will be in touch. Don't bother getting your own. You can't afford one anyway. He headed for the door, then turned back. Oh, and Quinn? When this goes to court, I'm going to tell them about your spending problem. The online shopping, the credit card debt, your complete lack of understanding about business finances. By the time I'm done, you'll be lucky to walk away with your car. I don't have a spending problem. That's not what my documentation says. Then he left, for good this time. I called Diary again. She didn't sound surprised. He's going to lie, I told her. He's going to make me look incompetent and reckless and… I know, sweetheart. That's what his father did to me, too. She paused. Which is why I started keeping records the day Thomas got married. I knew he'd do this eventually. I've been waiting. What do you mean? I mean, I have proof of things even you don't know about, and when the time comes, I'll make sure the right people see it. Why didn't you tell me before? Because you needed to see it for yourself first. If I'd told you, you wouldn't have believed me. You'd have defended him, loved him harder, tried to fix him. Her voice softened. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from this, but I can help you survive it. The divorce proceedings started in March. Thomas's lawyer, a man named Richard Kessler with silver hair and a $600 an hour fee, filed a petition claiming I'd mismanaged household finances and contributed nothing to the business's success. He valued Thomas's company share at $89,000, which even I knew was absurd. The business had revenue of at least $800,000 a year. My lawyer, Patricia Chen, cost $275 an hour and worked out of a small office above a dry cleaner. She was sharp and tireless, but we were outgunned. They're going to claim dissipation of assets, Patricia explained during our second meeting. Basically, they'll say you wasted marital money on frivolous purchases. If they can prove it, the judge might give you less than half. But I didn't. Thomas is the one who… I know, and we have some evidence, but Quinn, they have more. Or at least they're claiming they do. She looked at me seriously. This is going to get ugly. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the safety deposit box, the copies of Venmo transactions, the Coastal Ventures bank statements, Diary's promise. Yes, I said. I'm prepared. I moved out of the house in April and into a tiny apartment on Maple Ridge Boulevard. It had one bedroom, a kitchen the size of a closet, and a view of a parking lot. Rent was $1,150 a month, which was exactly $200 more than I could afford on my payroll coordinator salary. I ate pasta 4 nights a week. I stopped buying coffee. I wore the same 3 work outfits in rotation. Janet from work noticed and started accidentally making too much lunch, offering me half. I accepted because I was too proud to admit I needed it and too hungry to refuse. Thomas, meanwhile, moved Delilah into our old house. I know because Susan called me in May, crying, and told me she'd been there for dinner and seen Delilah wearing my bathrobe. I didn't know Quinn. I swear I didn't know how serious it was. He told me they were just friends, that you were the one who wanted the divorce. Susan's voice cracked. And he's still paying me. I told him to stop, but he said I'd earned it and I needed the money and… Susan, did he ask you to lie about working for the company? Silence. Susan? He said if anyone asked, I should say I did filing and data entry from home. He said it was technically true because I'd helped him organize some papers once. She was crying harder now. I'm so sorry. I didn't think it mattered. I didn't think anyone would check. It's okay, I told her, even though it wasn't. Just tell the truth if anyone asks. That's all you have to do. She promised she would. I didn't believe her. People like Susan don't stand up to people like Thomas. I understood that now. In June, Thomas showed up at my work. I was at my desk processing timesheets when he walked through the door at 2:17 in the afternoon. He was wearing a suit I'd never seen before, charcoal gray with a blue tie, and he looked like he'd just come from somewhere important. Our office was small, maybe 12 people total, and everyone looked up when he walked in. "Quinn," he said, loud enough that Janet and Marcus and Sandra all heard him. "We need to talk. This isn't a good time." "I'll only take a minute." He walked closer, standing right at the edge of my cubicle. His voice was pleasant, reasonable. "I wanted to give you a chance to settle this before court. My lawyer drew up a revised agreement. You sign away any claim to the business or the house, and I'll cover your credit card debt. $14,000. That's more than fair." "I don't have $14,000 in credit card debt." "According to the statements, you do." "What statements?" He pulled a folder from his briefcase and set it on my desk. Inside were credit card statements for an account I'd never opened, showing charges at department stores and online retailers I'd never used. The account was in my name. My face went hot. "Thomas, I didn't open this account." "Then who did?" "You did." He looked at me with something close to pity. "Quinn, I know this has been hard on you. The separation, the stress. But making accusations isn't going to help. Just sign the agreement, move on with your life." Janet was watching from her desk 3 feet away. Marcus had stopped typing. Sandra was pretending to file papers, but I could see her leaning closer. I kept my voice level. "No. No? I'm not signing anything, leave." Thomas's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe. But it's my mistake to make." He picked up the folder, slid it back into his briefcase. "Fine, we'll do this the hard way. But don't say I didn't give you a chance." He walked out. The office stayed quiet for a full minute after he left. Then Janet came over to my desk and squeezed my shoulder. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. That night, something inside me hardened, not broke, hardened, like scar tissue forming over a wound. I called Patricia and told her about the credit card statements. She wasn't surprised. "They're going to claim you opened the account and hid it from Thomas. It's classic fraud setup. We'll fight it. But Quinn, you need to understand something. Men like Thomas don't play fair. They play to win." "So do I said. "Then we need every piece of documentation you have. And I mean everything." I gave her copies of everything in the safety deposit box. She went quiet as she read through the Coastal Ventures bank statements. "Quinn, this is fraud. Financial fraud. If we can prove he created this company to hide marital assets, we can prove it. I have the registration documents. I have 18 months of bank transfers. I have testimony from Susan admitting she didn't do any work." Patricia looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "Why didn't you show me this before?" "Because I was waiting for the right time." "This is the right time." "No," I said. "The right time is in court, when he's under oath, when his lawyer thinks they've already won." Patricia smiled. "You're tougher than you look." "I'm learning." The court date was set for September 12th. Delaware Family Court, Wilmington. Judge Catherine Valdez presiding. In August, Diary called me. She sounded tired. "Quinn, sweetheart, I need to tell you something." "What's wrong?" "I'm sick. It's not serious yet, but it's not going away either." She paused. "I'm going to testify at your hearing. I've already talked to your lawyer. I have records of Thomas's business dealings going back 6 years. I know where the money went. I know about the affair. I know about Coastal Ventures." "Diary, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do. Because his father did this to me, and I stayed quiet, and it destroyed 30 years of my life. I won't watch it happen to you." Her voice was firm. "Thomas doesn't know I'm going to be there. Richard Kessler doesn't know. It's going to be a surprise. And sweetheart, it's going to change everything. He's your son. I know, but you're the daughter I should have protected from him." I cried after we hung up. Not sad crying. Something else. Relief, maybe. Or gratitude. Or the feeling of realizing you're not alone after months of believing you were. The weeks before the hearing were the longest of my life. I went to work. I ate pasta. I reviewed documents with Patricia until I had them memorized. Thomas sent me 2 more settlement offers, each worse than the last. I refused both. Then, on September 11th, the night before the hearing, Patricia called me at 9:37 p.m. Quinn, I just got a call from Richard Kessler. They want to meet tomorrow morning before court, 7:30 a.m. His office. He says Thomas has new evidence that will end this quickly. What kind of evidence? He wouldn't say. But Quinn, he sounded confident, too confident. What do you think I should do? I think you should go. Hear what they have. Don't commit to anything. And remember that whatever they show you, we have Diary's testimony. They don't know she's coming. I barely slept that night. At 7:26 a.m. on September 12th, I walked into Richard Kessler's office on Market Street. It was all glass and dark wood and leather chairs that probably cost more than my car. Thomas was already there, sitting next to Delilah. She was younger than I'd imagined, maybe 26, with long dark hair and a diamond bracelet I recognized from a receipt I'd found. She looked at me like I was interrupting something private. Richard Kessler stood and shook my hand. His grip was firm, professional. Quinn, thank you for coming. Please sit. Patricia and I sat across from them. Thomas didn't look at me. I'll get right to the point, Richard said, sliding a document across the table. We have evidence that Quinn opened a fraudulent business account and embezzled approximately $52,000 from the company over the past 2 years. The transfers were small enough to avoid immediate detection, but our forensic accountant traced them to an account in Quinn's name. I looked at the document. It showed bank transfers from the company to an account at First National Bank. The account holder was listed as Quinn Donnelly. I didn't open that account, I said. The signature on the application says otherwise. Patricia leaned forward. We'll need to see the original application, not a copy, and we'll need verification of the signature. Of course. We'll present all of that in court. Richard folded his hands. However, if Quinn is willing to sign a settlement agreement relinquishing all claims to marital assets and accepting full responsibility for the fraudulent transfers, Thomas is prepared to drop any criminal charges. The room went very quiet. Criminal charges, I repeated. Embezzlement is a felony in Delaware, Richard said. Thomas has been generous in hoping to resolve this privately. I looked at Thomas. He was watching me now, and there was something in his expression that I'd seen before, the same cold certainty he'd had the day he told me I couldn't afford a lawyer. No, I said. Quinn, Patricia started. No, I didn't open that account. I didn't embezzle anything, and I'll prove it in court. Richard sighed like I was being unreasonable. Then we'll see you at 9. We left. Patricia grabbed my arm in the elevator. Quinn, that was a forgery. They forged your signature. But proving that in court is going to be, I know. But we have Diary, and we have the real fraud, Coastal Ventures, the fake payroll, all of it. They're going to destroy you if we get this wrong. They're going to destroy me anyway. At least this way I fight back. At 8:52 a.m., Patricia and I walked into Courtroom 4 of Delaware Family Court. It was smaller than I'd expected, with wood paneling and fluorescent lights and 30 seats in the gallery. Thomas and Richard were already at their table. Thomas was wearing the charcoal suit again. Delilah sat in the front row behind him, along with Susan and Thomas's Uncle Carl. I sat at our table. My hands were shaking. Patricia squeezed my arm once, then opened her briefcase. At 9:03 a.m., Judge Catherine Valdez entered. She was in her 50s, with short gray hair and reading glasses on a chain. Everyone stood. Please be seated. We're here for Morris versus Donnelly, dissolution of marriage. Mr. Kessler, you may begin. Richard stood. Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of financial misconduct. Mrs. Donnelly has systematically embezzled funds from the marital business, opened fraudulent credit accounts, and attempted to hide her actions through false accusations against Mr. Morris. We have documented evidence of— Your Honor, Patricia interrupted. If I may, we have evidence that directly contradicts these claims and proves that Mr. Morris is the one who— Mrs. Chen, you'll have your turn. Judge Valdez looked at Richard. Continue. For the next 40 minutes, Richard presented his case. He showed the bank statements with my name. He showed the credit card debt. He called a forensic accountant who testified that the transfers matched my computer's IP address. He made me sound like a criminal. Patricia cross-examined, poking holes where she could, but it wasn't enough. I could see it in the judge's face. She was believing him. Then Richard called Thomas to the stand. Thomas swore to tell the truth. He sat down, adjusted his tie, and looked directly at the judge. Mr. Morris, Richard began, can you describe your wife's financial behavior during your marriage? Quinn was never good with money. I tried to help her. Budgets, savings plans. But she'd spend impulsively and then hide the receipts. I covered for her because I loved her. I thought I could protect her from herself. Did you know about the embezzlement? Not until my accountant found the discrepancies 3 months ago. I was devastated. I've built that business from nothing. To think my own wife. He stopped, like the emotion was too much. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and call him a liar in front of everyone. But Patricia had warned me. Don't react. Stay calm. Let them underestimate you. Mr. Morris, Richard continued, are you currently in a relationship with someone named Delilah Monroe? Yes. Did that relationship begin before or after you separated from Quinn? After. Quinn and I had been growing apart for years. After we separated, I met Delilah through mutual friends. She's been a support during this difficult time. It was so smooth, so believable. I looked at the judge. She was taking notes. Richard finished. Patricia stood for cross-examination. Mr. Morris, you testified that your wife was bad with money, but isn't it true that Quinn worked as a payroll coordinator, someone who handles financial records professionally? Objection, relevance, Richard said. Sustained. Patricia tried another angle. Mr. Morris, can you explain why there are Venmo payments totaling over $18,000 to Delilah Monroe? Many of them dated months before you claim your separation began. Thomas didn't hesitate. Delilah was a marketing consultant for the business. Some of those payments were personal loans to help her during a difficult period. Quinn knew about them. That's not true, I said, too loud. Judge Valdez looked at me sharply. Mrs. Donnelly, please remain silent unless you're on the stand. Patricia continued. Mr. Morris, are you familiar with a company called Coastal Ventures, LLC? For the first time, Thomas hesitated. Just for a second. No. You're not familiar with a company registered in your name in January of last year? I may have registered it for tax purposes. I register several holding companies. I don't recall the specifics. And you don't recall transferring $76,000 from your business into that account? If transfers were made, they were legitimate business expenses. I'd have to review the records. He was good, too good. Every answer was just plausible enough. Patricia called me to the stand. I swore to tell the truth and sat down. My mouth was dry. Mrs. Donnelly, Patricia began, did you open the bank account Mr. Kessler referenced? No. Did you embezzle any money from the marital business? No. Can you explain the evidence to the contrary? Someone forged my signature. The IP address they claim is mine must have been spoofed or... Objection, speculation. Sustained. Patricia tried to walk me through the Coastal Ventures evidence, but Richard objected to nearly every question. The judge sustained most of them. I could feel the case slipping away. Then, at 11:42 a.m., Patricia said, Your Honor, we'd like to call a witness. Diary Morris. Richard stood immediately. Objection. This witness was not disclosed. She's on our witness list, submitted last week. Your Honor, we were not informed. The list was filed properly, Patricia said. Mrs. Morris has critical testimony regarding Mr. Morris's financial history and behavior. Judge Valdez looked at Richard, then Patricia. I'll allow it. Call your witness. The courtroom doors opened. Diary walked in. She was wearing a navy dress and her pearl earrings. She moved slowly, using a cane I'd never seen before, but her eyes were clear and sharp. She looked at Thomas once as she passed his table. I saw his face go white. Susan, sitting behind him, gasped audibly. Thomas leaned back to Richard and whispered something urgent. Richard's expression went from confident to confused. Diary was sworn in and sat down. Patricia approached. Mrs. Morris, can you state your relationship to the parties? I'm Thomas Morris's mother, Quinn's former mother-in-law. And you're here today to testify against your son? I'm here to tell the truth. A murmur went through the courtroom. Judge Valdez banged her gavel once. Quiet, Patricia continued. Mrs. Morris, do you have personal knowledge of the financial matters in this case? Yes, I've been tracking Thomas's business activities for 6 years, since he got married. Why? Diary looked at Thomas. Because his father did the exact same thing to me. False accounts, hidden money, affairs disguised as business expenses. When Thomas started his company, I saw the same patterns. I knew he'd eventually do to Quinn what his father did to me. Objection, Richard said. This is hearsay and irrelevant to— Your Honor, Patricia interrupted. Mrs. Morris has documentation to support her testimony. I'll allow it. Continue. Diary reached into her purse and pulled out a thick folder. I have copies of every document Quinn couldn't access. Thomas's personal bank statements showing cash withdrawals that match the amounts he claimed Quinn embezzled. Registration documents for Coastal Ventures showing his signature, not Quinn's. Text messages between Thomas and Delilah dating back 2 years, long before the separation. And most importantly, she paused, pulling out a single sheet of paper. A notarized statement from the bank manager at First National, confirming that the account in Quinn's name was opened by Thomas using a forged signature. I paid for the handwriting analysis myself. The courtroom went completely silent. Richard stood. Your Honor, these documents were not disclosed in discovery. This is a violation of— These documents weren't available during discovery, Patricia said. Mrs. Morris obtained them independently and only shared them with us 3 days ago. We filed a supplemental disclosure immediately. Judge Valdez held out her hand. Let me see them. Patricia handed them over. The judge spent 5 minutes reading in silence. Her expression didn't change, but I saw her jaw tighten. Mr. Kessler, did you know about Coastal Ventures? Your Honor, Did you know? I was informed by my client that it was a legitimate business entity. And the account at First National? Richard looked at Thomas. Thomas was staring at his hands. Your Honor, Richard said carefully, I may need to consult with my client. I think that's an excellent idea. Judge Valdez set the documents down. Miss Morris, did you know Quinn was being accused of embezzlement before today? Yes, Diary said. Thomas called me 2 weeks ago. He asked me to stay away from the hearing. He said Quinn was trying to ruin him and he needed my support. She looked at her son again. I told him I'd think about it. Then I called Quinn's lawyer. Why? Because 30 years ago I sat in a different courtroom and watched my husband convince a judge that I was the one who'd stolen our money. I had no proof. No one believed me. I lost everything. Her voice stayed steady. I won't let that happen to Quinn. Thomas finally spoke. Mom, you don't understand. Sit down, Mr. Morris, Judge Valdez said sharply. He sat. Patricia asked a few more questions, walking Diary through the evidence. Each document was worse than the last. Venmo payments to Delilah for hotels, receipts for jewelry, bank transfers to Coastal Ventures made at 2 a.m. when Thomas knew I was asleep, and then Patricia asked, Mrs. Morris, did you ever witness Thomas threaten Quinn? Yes. 4 days ago he came to my house. He didn't know I was home. I heard him on the phone in the driveway. He said, if she doesn't sign the settlement, I'll bury her. I'll make sure she can't even get a job as a cashier when I'm done. Then he laughed. You heard this directly? Yes, I was standing at my kitchen window. He was 10 feet away. Objection, Richard was on his feet. There's no proof of this conversation. I recorded it, Diary said calmly. She pulled out her phone. Would you like to hear it? The courtroom erupted. Judge Valdez banged her gavel 3 times. Order, Ms. Chen, I want that recording. Patricia took the phone. 30 seconds later, Thomas's voice filled the courtroom through the court's sound system. If she doesn't sign the settlement, I'll bury her. I'll make sure she can't even get a job as a cashier when I'm done. Then laughter. Then, trust me, Richard, by the time we present the embezzlement evidence, she'll look so guilty the judge won't care what else we have to make up. The recording stopped. I looked at Thomas. He was staring at the table, his face gray. Richard had his hand over his face. Delilah was crying quietly in the front row. Susan had her hand over her mouth. Judge Valdez was silent for a long moment. Then she said, Mr. Kessler, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to confer with your client. When you return, I expect a full explanation of what I just heard. If I'm not satisfied, I'm referring this matter to the Delaware Bar Association and the State Attorney's Office for investigation. Richard nodded. He and Thomas left the courtroom. The gallery was buzzing. Patricia squeezed my hand under the table. Diary stepped down from the stand and walked over to me. She touched my cheek once, gently. You're going to be okay now, sweetheart. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me. You're the one who had the courage to fight. 7 minutes later, Thomas and Richard returned. Thomas looked like he'd aged 10 years. Judge Valdez looked at them expectantly. Your Honor, Richard said, his voice hollow, my client wishes to withdraw his financial claims and accept full responsibility for the fraudulent accounts and transfers. I see. And the embezzlement allegations? Withdrawn. We acknowledge that Mrs. Donnelly had no involvement in any financial misconduct. Mr. Morris, do you have anything to say? Thomas stood slowly. No, Your Honor. Then here's what's going to happen. This court finds that Mr. Morris engaged in fraudulent concealment of marital assets, dissipation of marital funds, and perjury. Mrs. Donnelly is awarded her full equitable share of all marital assets, including the business, which will be valued by an independent appraiser. Mr. Morris is responsible for all of Mrs. Donnelly's legal fees. Additionally, I'm referring this case to the state attorney for possible criminal charges related to forgery and fraud. She looked at me. Mrs. Donnelly, I apologize that you had to endure this. The behavior exhibited by opposing counsel and Mr. Morris is reprehensible. You should be proud of yourself for standing up. I nodded. I couldn't speak. We're adjourned. The courtroom emptied slowly. Thomas walked out without looking at anyone. Delilah followed him, still crying. Susan stopped at our table. Quinn, I'm sorry. I didn't know how bad it was. I should have said something sooner. It's okay, I said, because what else could I say? She left. Patricia packed up her briefcase. You did good, really good. Diary did good. You both did. Diary and I walked out together. On the courthouse steps, she stopped and looked at me. I have something for you, she said. She pulled an envelope from her purse. Don't open it until you're alone. Promise? I promise. And she hugged me, and I felt how thin she'd gotten, how fragile. Take care of yourself, sweetheart. You deserve better than what my son gave you. You deserved better too, she smiled sadly. Maybe, but at least I got to help you. That's worth something. I opened the envelope that night in my tiny apartment. Inside was a letter, handwritten on cream stationery. Dear Quinn, if you're reading this after the hearing, then everything went the way I hoped it would. If you're reading it before, then I'm probably gone, and I want you to know what to do. I've been watching Thomas since he started that business. I saw the same patterns I saw in his father. The lies, the accounts, the cruelty disguised as love. I couldn't stop it while I was married. I was too young, too scared, too convinced I was the problem. But I could stop it from happening to you. The documents I gave your lawyer are copies. The originals are with my attorney, Daniel Reeves. His office is at 412 Orange Street, Suite 3B. If anything happens to me before the hearing, Patricia Chen knows to contact him. I also opened a bank account in your name. Not a fake one, a real one, with $50,000 from my savings. The account information is with Daniel. It's yours, no strings. Use it to start over, go back to school, move somewhere new, buy yourself time to heal. You are not weak, Quinn. You are not stupid. You are not the person Thomas tried to make you believe you were. You're someone who stayed loyal to a man who didn't deserve it, and that's not a flaw. It's proof of your capacity to love. But you don't owe him that love anymore. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you sooner. I'm sorry Thomas learned the worst parts of his father instead of the best. I'm sorry you had to suffer to learn what I already knew, but I'm proud of you for fighting. All my love. Diary. P.S. The roses in my garden still bloom in November. They do it because I feed them in October when everyone else stops paying attention. Sometimes survival is just about paying attention when everyone else has moved on. I read it 3 times. Then I sat on my apartment floor and cried until I couldn't breathe. 2 days later, I went to Daniel Reeves's office. He gave me the originals of all Diary's documents, plus the bank account information. $50,000. Enough to change my life. She wanted you to have this, Daniel said. She told me if Thomas ever tried to divorce you, to wait until the hearing was over, then make sure you got this letter. She planned this 8 years ago. 8 years? The day Thomas introduced her to you. She said, "That girl's going to need help someday. I want to be ready." The divorce was finalized in November. An independent appraiser valued Thomas's business at $680,000, giving me an equitable share of $340,000. Combined with the house sale and Diary's $50,000, I walked away with $425,000. Thomas walked away with a fraud investigation, a disbarred lawyer, and a ruined reputation. Delilah left him 3 weeks after the hearing. Susan stopped speaking to him. His business partner, Greg, bought him out at the appraised value just to be rid of him. I moved to a new city. I went back to school for accounting. I bought a small house with a garden. And I planted roses. Diary passed away in February, 6 months after the hearing. I was at her bedside. Her last words to me were, "Did you plant the roses?" "Yes," I told her. "They're going to bloom in November." She smiled. "Good. Pay attention in October." Then she closed her eyes. If you're watching this, and you've ever stayed in a relationship because leaving felt impossible, I want you to know something. Leaving isn't the hard part. The hard part is believing you deserve better. The hard part is trusting your instincts when someone you love tells you they're wrong. I stayed with Thomas for years after I knew something was wrong. I told myself I was being paranoid, jealous, difficult. I made excuses for him because admitting the truth meant admitting I'd wasted years of my life on someone who never valued me. But the years weren't wasted. They taught me what I'll never accept again. If you've had to walk away from someone to protect yourself, type "I walked away" in the comments. Or if you chose to stay and set boundaries that changed everything, type "I set boundaries." Both are brave. Both are valid. If this story meant something to you, check the description for more stories just like this one. Thank you for being here.